up, Taiwan? I'm Sally Jensen with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Chinese Coast Guard vessels have fired water cannons at Philippine ships in the South China Sea. Philippine officials say his vessels were on a resupply mission in the contested Scarborough Shoal when they were blocked by the Chinese ships. 2 Philippine ships were damaged by the water cannons. It comes during major joint military drills between the Philippines and the United States. The latest data shows that Taiwan's wealth gap has grown sharply over the past 30 years. The government says the wealthiest people hold far, far more in assets than the poorest. John Van Trieste helps crunch the numbers and explains why.
For 55-year-old single mother Ms. Zhu, the fact that average household wealth in Taiwan is around $500,000 doesn't mean much. She's among the 71% of families that fall below this average. Some days, her sweet potato stand struggles to pull in even $30.
因为现在的利润不到一半，下雨天也不能卖，然后天气热，你看像天气这么热，没生意啊。
Not all those who fall below the average are in quite such tough circumstances. But wealth inequality is a fact of Taiwanese society. And new government data shows it's grown greatly in recent decades. One way to see this is to compare the earnings gap between the richest 20% and the poorest 20% of society. In 1991, the richest made around 17 times more than the poorest. But by the end of 2021, that was up to 67 times more. Researchers say a person's occupation and economic trends factor into who rises in the wealth ratings and who falls behind. There are countries where the situation's worse. One way to see this is to look at what's known as the Gini coefficient. A number between 0 and 1 used to show how unequal a society is. 0 means perfect equality, while 1 means total inequality. With a 2021 score of 0.606, Taiwan is more equal than the UK, France, or Japan, to name a few examples. But back in 1991, Taiwan had a much lower score of 0.47. Taiwan's net and gross national wealth has risen even through the end of the pandemic. But there are still plenty of people in Taiwan, people like sweet potato vendor Ms. Zhu, who aren't benefiting from the country's overall prosperity. Eason Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Hualien officials are warning earthquake victims to be wary of real estate scams. Officials say people posing as real estate agents are trying to buy damaged properties from earthquake victims at low prices. A series of earthquakes damaged many buildings in the eastern county earlier this month, forcing hundreds of people out of their homes. The government is reminding people to stay vigilant, saying that earthquake subsidies will soon be provided. Medical workers at a hospital in Chiayi City in the country's south have staged a walkout over stalled salary negotiations. Meetings between the union and the hospital have been dragging on for months as the two sides try to agree on fair pay. Tiffany Wong reports.
A lunchtime walkout. Over 100 medical personnel at this hospital in Chiayi City in southern Taiwan are demanding higher pay and a plan to hire more staff. The hospital union says that stagnant wages have caused an alarming number of staff to quit and warned this could seriously affect medical care.
开刀房已经有超过30几个的护理师离职了。如果乡亲们要来开刀，可能会一直排，甚至只有医生。
The protest comes after 10 rounds of negotiations over the last 6 months failed to meet the union's demand of a 6% salary increase, instead only resulting in a 1 to 2% raise. They said they've seen the hospital invest in renovating its facilities, but not in its workers. But the hospital says that its pay and benefits are higher than the industry average, and that they have brought on new staff to replace those who have left.
会跟工会去讨论的。那我就是说，我先让大家知道，医院其实很照顾同仁啊。那我们的整个薪资福利也都是这个偏上。
Taiwan's medical sector has been facing growing dissatisfaction among workers, who point to issues like low salaries and long working hours. Now these workers in Jiayi want to make it clear that retaining skilled talent comes at a price. Howard Zhang and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Veterans Affairs Council has rejected China's plan to host the 100th anniversary of the Huangpu Military Academy. Beijing has invited 3,000 Taiwanese alumni to visit the academy's original site in Guangdong province. It was moved to Taiwan from southern China at the end of the Chinese Civil War, but it has continued to shape both countries' military histories. Taiwan's Veterans Affairs Council says Beijing's invitation is an attempt to gain influence.
当然没有资格，但是他要办的话呢是统战的意图。假设3000人去了。 那你既然那么喜欢那边，你干脆就不要回来了嘛。
Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare says he will not stand for renomination in a vote that could impact security in the Pacific. Sogavare severed ties with Taiwan in 2019, switching recognition to China. In 2022, his government signed a security pact with Beijing, drawing the Pacific island nation closer to China. The Solomon Islands plays a key role in the rivalry between Washington and Beijing. During the country's recent parliamentary elections, no single party won enough seats to form a government. With Sogavare bowing out, his party will now support Foreign Minister Jeremiah Manele for Prime Minister. The group of 7 nations have agreed to end their use of coal for power generation by 2035. Energy and environment ministers from France, the US, the UK, Germany, Japan, Italy, and Canada reached the deal in Turin, Italy on Monday. It's a significant step in the move away from fossil fuels, which cause climate change and pollution when burnt. Activists protested outside the 2-day meeting, saying the bloc's members need to decarbonize their economies as soon as possible. In more climate news, a wave of exceptionally hot weather is gripping South and Southeast Asia. It's creating unbearable conditions for people across the region and has triggered health warnings. Rosie Greninger reports.
Residents in Mumbai on India's west coast flocked to the city's watersides to find some relief from a record-breaking heat wave plaguing South and Southeast Asia. The scorching temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius have caused 2 heat stroke deaths in the country. And there have been 450 heat-related health incidents as people are forced outside to vote in the country's general elections.
इस गर्मी में हो चाहे कहीं भी हो, बरसात भी हो तो भी वोट डालने आना चाहिए.
In Tamil Nadu, in India's southernmost state, politicians are distributing water to aid voters. While at zoos across the country, keepers are doing what they can to try and keep animals cool, fanning them and providing icy treats. April and May are usually the hottest months in this region, but this year, temperatures have been worsened by climate change and the El Nino weather pattern that involves unusually warmer waters in the eastern Pacific. In Bangladesh, health warnings have been issued as temperatures reach over 42 degrees. But those who make a living outdoors are struggling to find a balance between shading from the sun and finding work.
এরকম টানা গরম দেখিনি কিন্তু বৃষ্টি হয়েছিল বাতাস হয়েছিল অনেক আরাম লাগছে এবার কাজে এক সপ্তাহ যে বৃষ্টিগুলো হইতেছে না বাতাস কোনোদিন হয় কোনোদিন হয় না মানুষের অনেক কষ্ট হয়েছে
Students in Bangladesh have now returned to learning after classrooms were closed for days due to the heat. But in the Philippines, schools are empty, shutting their doors after the heat index reached 50 degrees. The extreme heat is also affecting small businesses.
Malaki pong impact sa negosyo Napakalaki. Yung pong walang, kita ho ninyo, walang bumibili. Walang bumibiling sinong bibili sa'yo kung wala namang mga estudyante. Bibili ng mga school supply.
In Thailand, 30 people have been killed by heat stroke this year, and authorities are warning residents to avoid outdoor activities as temperatures reach over 40 degrees. Last week, demand for electricity soared as people turned to air conditioning for relief. But for the disadvantaged in the country, it is not an option. For years, scientists have been warning of the disastrous effects human activity, especially the burning of fossil fuels, is having on the climate. Now, climate activists are asking global leaders to see the extreme conditions people in South and Southeast Asia are grappling with as an urgent call to action. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
This school in the mountains of India has a big mission, keeping Tibetan culture alive. Harel Hughes reports.
In the mountains of India is a school full of students, and the language echoing off the walls comes from Tibet. This is a Tibetan children's village, a non-profit organization created by the Tibetan government in exile. They fled Tibet in 1959 after China took over in the 50s. At least 100,000 Tibetans followed their spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, into exile in India. Unhappy to see the living conditions of the children, the Dalai Lama established the first daycare here in 1960, with only 51 children. By 1972, the daycare became the Children's Village, and now it has become much more.
The whole purpose of having a school, a separate school, is to preserve our own culture. That is the mission of His Holiness Dalai Lama. From kindergarten, we start teaching all the subjects in our own language. We have our own cultural activities, dance and music and other prayer works, all these things.
Sanam is one of the children who left Tibet with his family in 1970. As the school's principal and a former student, he is ensuring Tibetan language and culture is passed on to the next generation.
I was a small kid. I used to come here. Now I've become big in this school. I learned everything like that. Something else, I don't know. Like, I read so good.
The 1,000 students currently enrolled at the school also learn life skills, such as laundry, cooking, and caring for the environment, and even stay in traditional Tibetan-style residences.
We have homes for them, so this is a kind of, not only a school, it's like a community where students can sleep together, eat together, and live together as friends, as a family, and as sisters and brothers.
More than 52,000 people have graduated from this school, and each year there are more enrollments, ensuring Tibetan traditions will continue outside their ancestral land. Isan Pan and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
New data shows Taiwan has seen a surge in the number of people who smoke at work in recent years. A survey by the Health Ministry found that 30% of men and 4.6% of women workers light up at the office, much higher than in previous years. More people are also being exposed to second-hand smoke at work at 28%. Anti-smoking groups say e-cigarettes and vapes are a factor in the increase, with more women opting for these than men. But doctors warn that the use of e-cigarettes can still affect women's reproductive organs because they contain nicotine. The Health Ministry says it is offering support for those trying to quit smoking.
出了3500多家的合约医师机构跟戒烟专线，让这个职场的这个伙伴或民众，他可以参加各种不同的多元的戒烟管道。
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Before we go, check out these yogis practicing on the runway at an airport in Bangkok. I'm Sally Jensen. Take care and see you next time.